Runoff elections in South Carolina are this coming Tuesday. Today we're going to hear from several candidates involved in those runoffs. Carolina This Week starts right now.
This is Carolina This Week. Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning. Voters will head to the polls one more time on Tuesday to decide several runoff elections around South Carolina. One state race that people are watching is for State Superintendent of Education. Last week we heard from the Republicans in the runoff. This morning we're going to hear from the Democrats. Joining me now is Florence's own Sheila Gallagher. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
Why did you get into the race for Superintendent of Education, and what's your background? Why did you want to do it?
Well, really, this race is about changing what's been happening in our public schools. Our teachers are ready to engage our students. We're ready to show really what they know. And that hasn't been the case under the last administration. As far as what I am, I have earned 3 master's degrees over the last years. I have been a classroom teacher for 30+ years. I hold an active teaching certificate. I served as the president of the South Carolina Education Association on a few occasions. And that's where I was able to work with and advocate for our public schools with the General Assembly, the Education Oversight Committee, as well as our State Board of Education.
Now, you have a relatively radical idea to help pay for some education in South Carolina. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I've come out to say that our schools are underfunded. And they're underfunded because what we've tried to do is to have the state do something about Act 388. They haven't. We've asked them to do something about tax exemptions, and they haven't. So I'm saying, all right, but our schools need to be funded because you have underfunded us all these years, shortchanged. And so I've looked at what's happened in Colorado and the state of Washington and say, why don't we look at the idea of legalizing marijuana? Now, it's important to understand that what we also want to do is to decriminalize it. That we have students that we lose because they get a record. Now they can't get the job they need. But the whole idea is that we would have a debate. It would be a referendum. So it's a few years off. It's not something that would be right around the corner. And people would have the opportunity to express their opinions, to go and get the data on the issue, but to be able to see this as what's happening around the country and other places, let's go ahead and grab at it and let's put it in so that our schools are properly funded.
You said you're not satisfied with what Dr. Zais has done in the position. What would you do differently?
Well, first of all, when you work on teacher evaluations, you work on what a teacher's strengths and weaknesses are. And that he hasn't done. He wants to come out with his thing, I'm going to give you a letter grade. That's not good. What you want to do is be sure that you have engaged the teachers so that you keep them active. And as I said, you work on strengths and weaknesses. He also hasn't been very effective working with the Education Oversight Committee or the State Board of Education. And those are 2 groups, though appointed by the General Assembly, are the ones directly responsible for our education. Talking
about oversight, I want to talk a little bit about Common Core. And a lot of vocal criticism of Common Core. Just about every candidate is running on getting rid of it. How do you feel about Common Core?
No, Common Core was good. The problem was it got a bad rap. I'm not sure what happened. I'm more than willing, though, to go ahead and start out after the election to have a new set of standards looked at by the state, to engage our teachers, our administrators, our parents, our business leaders, and look at what they think our schools need to be doing, and then work on setting standards from that perspective.
How should teachers be held accountable?
Teachers should be held accountable for when they're in their classrooms and what they're going to do for our students and how they are engaging them. And that's why it's important to say, hey, I'm going to look at your strengths and your weaknesses. And therefore, the administration is out there helping them with their weaknesses and making them stronger. People get into education because they love children.
What about testing? I know a lot of parents, I'm a parent, I have 2 kids in public schools. A lot of parents, I'm not saying I necessarily do, but a lot of parents complain about too much testing. Is there too much testing in schools?
There is too much testing. You basically want to get a student, you have standards in the school, whether it's Common Core or others, and you want to be able to say, hey, by the end of the year, this is what you need to accomplish to get to the next grade level. And you don't need a test necessarily to say that's where you are. You need a few tests to say, hey, here we are nationally, what happens, and how well are we really doing.
Real quickly, why should I vote for you?
You should vote for me because I have the experience to make this state change.
All right. Sheila Gallagher, Democratic candidate for State Superintendent of Education. Thank you for being with me this morning.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Tom Thompson, running against Sheila Gallagher in the runoff on Tuesday for State Superintendent of Education. Thank you for coming in and talking with me this morning.
Thank you, Tim.
First off, Mr. Thompson, for people who don't know who you are and what you stand for, why are you running for State Superintendent of Education? How did you get here?
Well, I'll tell you, I ran first back in 2010 when Jim Rex decided to step down. And I ran that time to fill the void. I thought that we were doing real good in terms of public education, and that with my background and credentials and my passion for public education, that I could continue the momentum that he started. I'm running now because we've lost that momentum. We were about to turn the corner with Jim Rex, and we're going in the other direction. So now I'm pledged to use that background and experience to get us back on track and to move us ahead. I talked about I mentioned my background and experience. I have 30 years plus in public education, starting as a high school math teacher. Then I was a high school principal in Winsboro, South Carolina. Went from there to the State Department of Education in a unit where we provided professional development for other principals and superintendents. Left there and went to the University of South Carolina for 16 years as a professor, helping to train young educators who were interested in careers in administration. And then went to South Carolina State University as Dean of the School of Graduate Studies. I now work for Walden University, its headquarters in Minneapolis. It's online. And I coordinate several of the PhD specializations in the College of Education.
In South Carolina, I don't have to tell you, but it's kind of an uphill battle for a state office, for a Democrat to take a state office. How do you think you can climb that mountain?
Well, I am optimistic because it's been done before. We had Inez Tenenbaum, we had Jim Rex, so they broke that barrier. I think we have to appeal to the moderate Republicans and to show them that our vision for public education is beneficial for them, it's good for children, and it's good for economic development in the state. And you know, if we can get economic development, if we can get the economy flowing in the right direction, we all benefit.
Common Core is something everybody's talking about in education right now. The wave of public opinion seems to be definitely not in its favor. Right. What do you think about Common Core?
I think Common Core had some very good components to it, and it had excellent potential in the state. The good components, I thought, were the rigor that it was going to infuse into our standards that will have to make its way into the curriculum. That's going to help us getting our young people to graduation, ready for the world of work or college or whatever their next step is. The other piece that I was very hopeful about was the testing issue. That it was helping us move away from testing for facts to testing for process, where we're testing students to see, test their ability to find information and use it to solve problems rather than just to regurgitate information. Those were good, and we've had evidence from many of the schools around the state that teachers who've been working on implementing Common Core, getting ready for it to come out, were very, very positive about it and enthusiastic about the kind of work that they were getting a chance to do. And now all of a sudden it comes to a stop. I don't think that's good for our teachers. I don't think it's good for our schools. I don't think it's good for our young people. So I expect that if I'm successful, we will renew that conversation about how we can get those things into our school system to benefit our children.
Last question for you, quickly. Why should I vote for you?
Because my experience in public education is unparalleled by any of the opponents on the Democratic side or on the Republican side. My connectedness to the system is unmatched because the people that I'd have to work with are people who attended courses that I taught. So we have that relationship already, and it's my intention to ask them to come to the table to work together to solve the problems that we have in public education. and my passion is unlimited.
Tom Thompson, Democratic candidate for State Superintendent of Education. Thanks for making the trip down here to talk to me
Tim,
today.
thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
All right. Stay with us. We will be right back talking about Horry County Council District 5. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. A runoff election that some voters will see on the ballots come Tuesday is for Horry County Council District 5. Tyler Servant and Reese Boyd are in the race for that. I invited both candidates to come on the show to talk about their campaign, who they are, and why you should vote for them. Reese Boyd took me up on that invitation. He joins me now. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to sit with you again. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. First off, did you expect to be in this position? This was a topsy-turvy race, and looked like Cliff Smith was going to get your spot for a minute, and then through an error at the county, it ended up being, after an error from the county was accounted for, you ended up being the candidate.
Reports of our death were exaggerated. It's been an interesting race. We had an interesting night. We went home from the restaurant the evening of the election thinking that we were, in fact, in a strong second position, and late in the evening learned that the order had changed. So it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, but yes, the system worked, and the error was corrected. There was still some people out there who misunderstand, what the result was, and so we're trying to correct that by getting the word out. So thank you for mentioning that. We are in the runoff, and the runoff is Tuesday.
For people who for people who are not aware, District 5 covers Surfside, areas around Surfside Beach, Garden City Beach, kind of the southeastern corner of the county there. What do you see as being the big driver of what you should be doing if elected? What should the county councilman who represents District 5 be doing?
Excellent question. We are working hard, Tim, to do the things that we think are most important for the residents of District 5. And we've all been saying, quite frankly, many of the same things. I say we, the remaining candidates, but even when there were more candidates, we were all talking about the same issues. We want infrastructure improvements. We want our roads to be maintained. The roads that we have, we want them maintained. We want economic development. We want jobs, more economic diversity in District 5, and critically important is public safety. We want our firemen, our police, our first responders to have the resources that they need to do their jobs effectively. So we're talking, quite frankly, about a lot of the same issues. The issue that we think, quite frankly, distinguishes the candidates remaining in the runoff is the question of experience and the background that each candidate brings to the table.
Since we last talked, Memorial Day happened, and there was violence in Myrtle Beach stemming from, some say, stemming from the Bike Fest in Atlantic Beach. From a county perspective, what do you think the county could do to help counteract a violent crowd, a violent holiday?
We cannot stand for the kind of conduct that we saw on Memorial Day weekend. We just cannot allow that, Tim. That doesn't have to happen, but just a couple of times, and people they won't come to Myrtle Beach because we'll not be regarded as a safe place to vacation with your family, and we can't have that. We can't afford that. It's about the rule of law. It's quite simply, you're welcome to come to Myrtle Beach as long as you obey the law. And if you're not going to obey the law, you either shouldn't come or you're going to spend your vacation in jail. And that's a very simple standard, and it should apply equally to everyone. And so what we've done is we've said, look, this is not just a county issue. I applaud Chairman Mark Lazarus for setting up the committees, the task forces that have been set up and working with other governments. It's a municipal government issue, it's a county government issue, it's a state government issue, but all levels of government have to work together to make certain that this doesn't happen again, because it cannot be tolerated. And it's not really anything other than a question about the rule of law. Do we enforce our laws or do we not? And we have to. We have no choice about that.
All right. Reese Boyd, candidate for District 5, covering Surfside Beach, southern parts of the county. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Tim. Good to see you again.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Carolina This Week. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. Joining me now is Mike Campbell, who's running for Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina. Mike, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
If the Campbell name sounds familiar, it's because you're the son of Carol Campbell, former governor of South Carolina. Yeah,
I'm very, very proud, and we have a lot of close ties down here along the Grand Strand and the Horry, Georgetown area. My grandfather, Carol Campbell Sr., actually was kind of a fixture, and particularly with the Republican Party down here for many years, ran hotels here on the Grand Strand. And so I grew up a lot of time, spent a lot of time down here. Plus, I had business interests down here. We owned a chain of 19 Wendy's restaurants around the state at one time, and the bulk of them were along the Grand Strand in this area. So, and my mom still lives in Georgetown.
Okay. Why Lieutenant Governor?
Well, you know, I ran in 2006, and we won the primary and then narrowly lost to the runoff. But one thing about that, going through that process that demonstrated to me was what we were saying and what we were talking about obviously was resonating with a lot of people around South Carolina. And at that time, one of the things that I was running on was to have the governor and lieutenant governor run together on a ticket. In 1993, my dad, when he was governor, restructured state government for the first time since Reconstruction, having the most significant government restructuring at that time. They consolidated 79 state agencies into 17. But when he did that, that was never meant to be a one-time fix-all solution. It was supposed to be a continuation. And the next phase of that he wanted to concentrate on were our constitutional officers and the Budget and Control Board, which, thank goodness, Nikki Haley just recently, they have done away with that and are going to have the new Department of Administration. But when I ran, and we were looking at the Lieutenant Governor's office, and people had been talking to me about running for Lieutenant Governor at that time for quite a while, it just made sense to me to continue that next step in restructuring was to have the two of them run together on a ticket. So that was something we campaigned on, we advocated for, and then after the election, it was something that I continued to go out and be a proponent for, try to be a voice for and influence. And so I was thrilled to see it finally come to fruition. I worked with Mark Sanford to try and help get it done, and then, more recently, anytime Nikki Haley has asked us to work with her on the restructuring thing, I was very honored because I was the only other individual asked to speak at the bill signing for the latest form of restructuring, and she was very gracious in asking us to be there and doing that as a way to pay honor to Dad. But bring it to where we are today and why I'm doing this again. Realistically, the Lieutenant Governor's office has traditionally been a ceremonial position, but that changed a good bit in 2006 when the Office on Aging, which is the chief advocacy group for all of our seniors issues in South Carolina, was moved under the auspice of the Lieutenant Governor's office. So right now, realistically, the Lieutenant Governor has two responsibilities that they are in charge of constitutionally. That is to serve as the president of the state Senate, which, from time to time you get to rule things in and out of order or may cast a tie-breaking vote every now and then. But more importantly, the one thing that you really have a say-so on and that you can affect some change on, which is near and dear to my heart, are the seniors issues in this state. And the reason it's so personal to me is I lost my father to Alzheimer's, and at the time that he passed away, well, actually when he was first diagnosed, our family got very involved with the South Carolina Alzheimer's Association. And when we did that, we wanted it to be not just a situation where we were just lending our last name to it. We wanted to be involved and help create programs that actually benefited people. And as we were going through that process, I started seeing the effects as a sole caregiver that it was taking on my mom, Iris. And like so many other families that go through this, it was the stress and strain on her was really affecting her health. And that's one of the issues that as our population continues to grow, and I don't care whether, it doesn't matter whether it's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, palsy, any of the health issues that our seniors are going to be faced with. This is something we're all going to be affected by at some point in our lives, either as victims of these diseases or as the sole caregivers. And too many times the caregivers end up becoming patients themselves in the process. I just heard a statistic the other day that I'd never heard before, and that was that 65% of all sole caregivers actually pass away before the patient that they're caring for does. And that's something that, from a humanistic side, that we need to do something about as much as we can, but also from where the state government plays a role in that. Our Medicaid and Medicare system is already overburdened as it is, on the brink of snapping. If we can do some things just to offer some preventative measures to help these individuals and keep them healthy in the process of trying to take care of the patients, then that's not only the right thing to do, it's going to benefit your state as well.
If you're elected, moving down the road, say at the end of this 4-year term, when the lieutenant governor's role does change, how do you see yourself running for a second term, or do you try to get to the top of the ticket? What happens there?
Well, you know, and it really, honestly, this is, I really haven't thought beyond this. You know, people have asked me that many times, but I'm so passionate about the Office on Aging and working on the seniors and trying to help implement some of the programs that we did with the Alzheimer's Association and bring that experience to that I really haven't looked beyond that. Now, having said that, if we get in there and we're fortunate enough to get there this time and it works out and we are really can do some, affect some changes for the seniors, and somebody comes along and says, hey, we want you to be on the ticket with us to continue the work that you're doing with the Office on Aging, absolutely it would be something I'd consider. Beyond that, you know, this is not about a resume builder, and that's why I think I kind of bring a unique perspective to the office, because I haven't run for a bunch of different offices. I'm not a career politician, but at the same time, I'm not a novice to government. I grew up around government, learned a thing or two from what I consider one of the best leaders our state's ever had, but I still bring that outsider's small businessman's perspective to the office. So I feel like I bring kind of just a unique perspective there. So that's the reason, to me, you know, when I tell people this is personal to me, it's not political, because I really want to help the seniors of our state and not build my political resume.
Let me ask you this last question. I can only give you about 20 seconds for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, but at the end of the day, so many candidates for lieutenant governor, why should I vote for you?
Well, I think because of my passion for the Office on Aging and wanting to be our champion for our seniors. I mean, you can stand up and you can promise everything in the world that you'll do all these wonderful things as lieutenant governor. The reality is you just don't have the authority to do those things other than being a bully pulpit. Of course, I want to be a voice for small business and other issues that our state's faced with, but at the end of the day, the one thing that the buck stops with you as lieutenant governor that you can actually affect change on are those seniors' issues. And anybody that suggests otherwise is either misleading the public, or they don't understand how the office is really set up and structured.
All right. Mike Campbell, Republican candidate for lieutenant governor, thank you for being with me this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. That's all for Carolina this week. Don't forget to vote Tuesday. We'll see you back here next Sunday morning at 11.